on the Hawkeye Sports Network from Learfield. This is the Fight for Iowa podcast, brought to you by Athletico Physical Therapy, proud partner of the Iowa Hawkeyes and the Big Ten Conference. Iowa's corn farmers of the Iowa Corn Growers Association and Iowa Corn Promotion Board. You may think Iowa grows corn, but the truth is, corn grows Iowa. Shields, we're right there with you in Des Moines, Sioux City, Iowa City, and Cedar Falls. University of Iowa Healthcare. Changing medicine, changing lives. This is the Fight for Iowa podcast. Here's the voice of the Hawkeyes, Gary Dolphin.
Iowa football starts a new chapter on offense this fall with first-year coordinator Tim Lester. The Hawkeye defense remains a bestseller. Coordinator Phil Parker, recipient of the Frank Broyles Award last year for the nation's top assistant coach, is the mastermind behind a 4-3 scheme that ranked top 5 nationally in scoring defense and passing yards allowed, 15th against the run, and 7th in total defense. Armed with the nation's best punter in Tory Taylor, the Hawkeye D allowed but 32 first downs. Many of the key participants on that side of the ball have decided to return for a final year. They and their teammates returned to Iowa City in early June for a month's worth of conditioning and lifting before the 4th of July holiday and fall camp, all in anticipation of a new season that's 90 days out. That's the subject matter on this week's Fight for Iowa podcast, courtesy of UIHC, Iowa Corn, Shields, and Athletico. We're back in a minute.
More of the Fight for Iowa podcast after this.
When it comes to your health, you need the full picture. That means the right diagnosis and the right treatment right from the start. I'm Aaron Bose, pediatric neurologist with University of Iowa Healthcare. Here, we're working together every day to advance medicine so you can get the best care. With more research, more clinical trials, and more treatment options than anywhere else in the state, the University of Iowa Healthcare is changing medicine and changing lives. Learn more at uihc.org.
To anyone passing through our state, fields and fields of corn might be what they see. But the people who call Iowa home know it's so much more. Corn is ethanol, a homegrown, renewable fuel. Corn is delicious pork, beef, poultry, and dairy. Corn is in 4,000 products we rely on every day. So yeah, our highway views are full of corn, and we're proud of it. Because corn grows Iowa. Show your support for Iowa corn farmers at iowacorn.org/fan of corn.
Tickets are on sale now for the Hy-Vee IndyCar Race Weekend Concert Series. Saturday, July 13th, see Luke Combs and Eric Church. And Sunday, July 14th, see Post Malone and Kelsey Ballerini live in concert. 1 ticket per day gets you into a race and 2 concerts. Tickets on sale now at HyVeeIndyCarWeekend.com.
Are aches, pains, or injuries keeping you on the sidelines? At Athletico, our movement experts are here to help you turn your setbacks into comebacks and create a personalized game plan for your recovery. With no prescription or referral needed, Athletico Physical Therapy is where your comeback story begins. Get started today by scheduling a free assessment at athletico.com. Proud partner of the Iowa Hawkeyes.
Now back to the Fight for Iowa podcast. Here's the voice of the Hawkeyes, Gary Dolphin.
Bolstered by the return of a half-dozen starters that could have left Iowa for the next chapter of their life, including the National Football League, the Hawkeye defense looks to be stout again in 2024. The returnees include the Big Ten's top tackling duo in linebackers Jay Higgins and Nick Jackson, the hybrid plug-and-play cashbacks Sebastian Castro, and defensive backs Jamari Harris and Quinn Schulte. Deontay Craig and Y.A. Black, Ethan Herkett, and Aaron Graves are the familiar names in the trenches with another year of seasoning. Relying on punter Tory Taylor's replacement Reese Dakin to bury the opposing offense deep in its own territory, Iowa gave up just 20 touchdowns in 14 games en route to 10 victories a year ago. If the pie crust represents the front and back of the dessert, Iowa linebackers are that delicious sweet filling in the middle that you can't get enough of. The one-year extensions for Higgins, Jackson, and Castro will test the patience of heralded freshman Ben Keeter. Jaden Harrell, Carson Shire, and Jackson Rexroth. Linebacker coach and associate coordinator Seth Wallace reminds them, with Iowa linebackers, patience is a virtue.
Certainly there were those that we wanted, we wanted back defensively, and they took their time. They weighed their decision, and I think really what it came down to is just, a strong tie that they all had individually to the collection of the team, and that's what really made them, stick around.
And two of them happen to be the top tackling duo in the Big Ten, if not the country, Jay Higgins and Nick Jackson. You struck it rich with Nick, but he couldn't have done what he done without the guy in the middle, Jay.
Yeah, it's Nick is certainly in today's age of horror stories with the transfer portal and kids going places and maybe not making it, or kids going into the portal and never getting out. Nick's story is pretty cool because he came here with very limited expectations. Certainly did not come in here expecting much, and all he did is delivered on what we asked him to do, and our team welcomed him, our linebacker room welcomed him, and more importantly, Jay welcomed him, and the two of them have become great friends, roommates, and I think that's one reason again why Nick chose to stick around. Sebastian's he's a great story, and you talk about for those of us that were around when he first got here, just seeing how he's progressed, how he's matured, and when I say mature, I'm talking about his football maturity and the growth and experience that he's gotten up to this point. And he was another one that had a chance to leave, and I think there were some suitors that were reaching out to him and trying to get him to take his services to the next level. But he again made a good decision for himself. Obviously, it's a great decision for us as a team. But yeah, Sebastian's he's been really a staple to what we're doing defensively, and there's probably not a better pure all-around tackler in the Big Ten than Sebastian Castro.
Seth, one of the questions I get more than once in my travels is, okay, you got Big Ben coming in. How do the younger linebackers digest this, process this, and patiently wait their turn? Well, that's who you recruit typically, isn't it?
It is, and we try to be real clear and transparent on the front end that our linebacker position is not a position that that we would expect somebody to come in right away and play physically and mentally, and probably more mentally than anything. But it's just not. There's a lot to what's going on defensively, and a lot of that runs through the linebacker position, and it does take a little bit of time. So, with that requires a little bit of humility on the kids' end, and I think we set the table well at the beginning for what it's going to be like. But until you get there, until you live it, until you get humbled and put your humility ahead of yourself, it's a process. And we've got some guys that are anxiously awaiting, and I tell you that we got a couple of guys I'm really not surprised by any means, but it says a lot about him that when Jay had a chance to leave and Nick was expected to leave, and both of these guys came back, and we had some guys that were ready to take those roles. They had every reason in this day and age to leave and go somewhere else, and they've chosen to stay here. And I think that speaks volumes to the culture in the linebacker room, and the credit there goes to the kids. It doesn't go to myself, as well as just the individuals and the way that they look at things, which is different than a lot of college football.
To your point, there's a lot of great stories in the linebacker room, all over that Iowa defense, really. But you explain it to them when they come in. Don't look to start on day one. That said, Carson Shire is a great story. But first, talk about Ben's development. He's wrestling, he's playing football. That's a tall order, in particular, in lieu of the fact you got to keep your academics in order, too. What impresses you most about him? And then talk about Carson and the great story he's been starting on special teams.
Yep. Yeah, in Ben's case, this is, at some point, I think the concern is one sport's going to win out. Certainly, 8 months into it is not the time for one sport to win out. I think he deserves the opportunity to go through this and develop, in both sports. And he's certainly ahead of the curve from a wrestling standpoint. And the linebacker position's a little bit new to him in terms of college football. And the requirements there. But his development's has been as good as it can be. Splitting between two sports, he was fortunate to be redshirted wrestling wise and not. And not have to endure, the whole entire season, from a wrestling standpoint. But, we'll just see what happens over the next 8 months. And then in regards to Carson, like he's one that I had mentioned earlier that, I think he saw that opportunity looming on the horizon. And then Nick and Jay came back. But all he did this spring is competed his ass off. And, he proved that he should be out there. And so we've got to find a way to make sure that Carson Shires out there in a much larger capacity than just being that nucleus on special teams.
We're talking with Seth Wallace, Hawkeye linebacker coach, and got a promotion this year. We all know what you've meant to the program on that side of the football and how you and Phil Parker have been joined at the hip, which is kind of unique in and of itself. Similar personalities, but what endears you to Phil Parker?
Well, it's unique because I got here in the winter of 2005, and I came here as a defensive graduate assistant hired by Norm Parker, and fortunately I had a connection with Norm, and that's how that story started. But once I got here, I was thrown into Phil's room, and I was Phil's graduate assistant, which that took a good period of time, much like it does any of our defensive backs that join the program. It takes a little bit of time to earn his trust and respect and go down the list. But I think, spending 3 years with him and developing a very, very unique and worthwhile relationship with him, and then leaving for 5 years and going and kind of doing it on my own and, coaching the secondary somewhere else and having defensive success. And we won a national championship. And, I think a lot of that, Phil paid a lot of attention to. And that's why, 2014 is when I ended up back here. And, but none of that happens. None of it happens if you don't have a head coach that's been, a part of the program for 25 years, going on 26. It just doesn't happen. So very fortunate.
The fact that you grew up in Iowa, you competed in Iowa. Kirk likes to talk about the Iowa culture a lot. You've witnessed it. You grew up in this state. What to you is the Iowa culture, the Iowa way?
Yeah, it's, I think first it starts with a foundation, and the foundation has always been and will continue to be just finding, local Iowa kids and then taking that nucleus and, allowing others to come in from all across the country to join the program. But, once they get here, they have a pretty good idea what the picture looks like because of, what is the foundation of this program. But at the end of the day, I mean, the one thing that has never wavered has been the way that the head coach has run the program, his beliefs, the way that we're going to play offensively, defensively, and special teams, the characteristics that, that we pride ourselves on, being tough, smart, physical, playing together, during the week, carrying on the mantra, preparing to be the best. Like, those are all things that, from the second that he got here, they've stood the test of time, and it's been real good for us. It's been real good for us here, over the last handful of years. We've been on a pretty good run, and we've got some guys coming back this year that I think will help us, keep this thing moving.
Wallace is in his 14th season at Iowa, 7th as assistant defensive coordinator. Head coach Kirk Ferentz starts his 26th year at the head of the pack. Ferentz, with 122 Big Ten victories, trails only Bo Schembechler and Woody Hayes for most conference wins. The players report back June 3rd, with quarterback Cade McNamara expected to be at full speed in time for the season opener, Fry Fest weekend, when the Hawkeyes welcome Illinois State to Kinnick Stadium. Hawkeye basketball breathed a sigh of relief this week when leading scorer Peyton Sanford announced he will return to Iowa for his senior season. Sanford has withdrawn his name from NBA draft consideration. The 6'7" guard forward from Waukee put up career-best numbers last season, averaging 16.5 points, 6.5 rebounds, and nearly 3 assists a game. Sanford led the Big Ten with 94 three-point goals and recorded the first triple-double in Iowa basketball history February 27th when he posted 30 points, 10 assists, and 10 rebounds against Penn State. I'm Gary Dolphin for the Fight for Iowa podcast. As always, thanks for tuning in. We're back again next week with another edition.
You've been listening to the Fight for Iowa podcast. Hawkeye fans, remember to hit the subscribe button on your favorite podcast app. Once you become a Fight for Iowa podcast subscriber, you'll automatically receive the latest episodes of the Fight for Iowa podcast, the Hawkeye Women Rise podcast, Hawk Talk replays, exclusive game content, and more. Until next time, on Iowa and go Hawks! The preceding has been a Learfield presentation on the Hawkeye Sports Network.